Mark, I'll keep working on Richard. You can go ahead.
All right. You guys all good?
Yeah.
All right. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Lake Bluff Board of Education regular meeting for November 10th, 2020. Our board members and members of the district's administrative team are participating in a virtual meeting as there is currently a requirement on group sizes in an effort to limit the spread of COVID-19. As a public body, the Lake Bluff Board of Education is subject to the Illinois Open Meetings Act. Prior to this meeting, a public announcement was posted on our website announcing various participation options, including asking questions ahead of the meeting using a Google form. For anybody watching, you can also ask questions live from Zoom. While the requirements of the Open Meeting Act have been relaxed during the global pandemic, the members of the Board of Education take their responsibilities as board members who are responsible to the public no less seriously. So, Leanne, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Andy Duran.
Present.
Ann Hill.
Present.
Mark Berry.
Present.
Leanne Charlo present. Julie Gottschall.
Present.
Richard Haig. Is he in here? Not here yet. John Marsden.
Present.
All right, we've got enough to begin, and I would like to ask you all to, we don't have a flag to look at, but to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. As always, we begin our meeting with the opportunity for public comment. Shelley, is there anything to read, or do you know if anybody would like to say anything live?
I don't have any public comment through the Google sheet, and I don't see anybody's hand raised at this time.
If you're watching on Zoom, you have to go down to the participants feature, and then you can point to your name, I think, and raise your hand or something like that. Is that how it works? And we'll call on you to speak live. I will offer the opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting, but also after Dr. Leali's update on return to learn. I forget the 8C, the return to learn update. So we will begin with public comment. The opportunity for board members to add an additional agenda item or a discussion item to be discussed tonight. If anybody would like to offer anything, please do so now. If not, you can always suggest an item for a future agenda by emailing me, myself or Dr. Leali. We also have something on the board to do with board member appreciation here, which I'm not sure how that goes.
We do. I get to present this. So November 15th of each year is designated as School Board Members Day in Illinois. This day is meant to recognize the outstanding efforts of the nearly 6,000 elected school board members throughout the state. It is also an opportunity to build community awareness around the essential role locally elected board and education members assume in our respective or representative democracy. And as you know, we have 4 seats coming up, so we want to raise awareness. The theme of this year's school board member recognition is perseverance through leadership. As a reminder, school board members are responsible for providing leadership that ensures a clear shared vision of public education for their schools, that sets high standards for the education of all students, and requires that the effective and efficient operation of their districts. School board members also adopt public policy to give voice to that leadership and employ a superintendent to administer adoptive policies. They are responsible for the regular monitoring of the district's performance and compliance with state policies as well. School board members selflessly volunteer countless hours to public service with no compensation other than a small token of our appreciation. Decisions made by school board members directly impact the quality of life and safety in their communities, placing them as the front line of American democracy. So we would like to thank you all for devoting the time and energy that you do to the successful education of our children in Lake Bluff. Your support to me as your new superintendent, our entire administration, teachers and staff is appreciated beyond measure. Also tonight, we are recognizing one of our board members in particular for participating in and completing the IASB Leadership Academy program, which requires 12 academy credits, as well as the Master Board Member program, which requires attendance at IASB division meetings, governing meetings, legislative leadership programs, as well as holding positions of leadership within the association. So I would like to personally congratulate our board president, Mark Berry, for attaining Leadership Fellow and Master Board Member status through IASB. We could not be more grateful for your leadership and partnership this year. Thank you all for your commitment to being fully invested school board members.
Thank you. Thank you for your token of appreciation too. Appreciate that. Very nice. As far as reports go, I am not sure who we have reports from tonight. Maybe you could take us through that, Dr. Leali?
Yep, we tonight have an LBES presentation. Nate, I don't know if there's anything you would like to mention tonight.
Just a quick thank you. This Monday morning when we arrived, there was a fantastic thank you sign posted in the front yard at LBMS, and I wanted to thank the PTO for that. And lots of teachers commented on how much that was appreciated. And so the Card Your Yard folks have done a fantastic job, and thank you for the PTO. I believe that may be a local family and responsible for that business. So that's also kind of a fun connection. But thank you, PTO, for that recognition. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Nate. And Kelly, if you want to go ahead with your presentation.
Absolutely. So I think that Shelley will help to bring in Jackie Tivador. I will echo Nate. Thank you so much, PTO. I was surprised by the welcome back sign in the front of our school. There was some conversation whether or not that sign was rented or purchased, because multiple welcome backs in a school year isn't usually what you would expect, but I think it might have been anticipated, but that was a nice surprise. It looked beautiful in the sunshine yesterday, and I think it withheld some of the winds today. So we're grateful for that. So my big role tonight and part of our update is November is LBES's month to feature students and highlight some of the things that are happening within our school. And as I thought about what to feature, it didn't take long for me to determine who to bring on with me this evening and what to talk about. So we have Friday morning announcements that are being hosted by fifth graders from our school. And I have to say, it is a highlight of my week. I think we all traditionally look forward to Friday, but this makes that day just a little bit sweeter and special because we have students that are sharpening their skills in presentation and really hosting announcements where they are able to allow their personalities to come out while filling the school in on important events for that day. Sometimes there are birthday announcements. Sometimes we have a joke. They'll highlight and feature important things to keep everybody in the know for that week. So I'm joined tonight by Jackie Tivador, our math enrichment specialist, who's doing far more than math enrichment when it comes to this experience for not only these fifth graders, but all of the students within our school. She's really taken the lead on this project this year. She previously partnered with our technology curriculum coordinator, Lori Brown, who has since retired. But Jackie has not skipped a beat. She's carried this forward. I'm so grateful for her to have the opportunity to support students. And I'm even more grateful for our fifth graders who are taking the risk and welcoming the challenge. And so we have a couple of fifth graders that are joining us tonight so that they can, you would rather hear from them. I don't mind sharing with you, but I think it's the kids that we're here for. So I'm going to pass it over to Jackie to give a little bit more information, and she can hand it over to our fifth graders. So Ms. Tivador, thanks for joining us tonight. I will pass the mic to you.
Right. So as Ms. Fay was saying, tonight we want to showcase some of our fifth grade students who've been putting together weekly Friday morning announcements for staff and for students at LBES. In previous years, our fifth graders were creating weekly video announcements using a green screen during their lunchtime. But in this year, that is not typical in many ways. We were excited to find a way that we could still continue this tradition and build the sense of community that our staff and students have come to love with our Friday morning announcements. So here with us tonight, we have two fifth graders who have been integral in getting our morning announcements off the ground, and I will turn it over to them.
Hello, my name is Jeannie Pezza.
And my name is Grady Gustafson. We're fifth graders in Miss Lennox's class.
This year we have been helping create Friday morning video announcements. We create the announcements using a program called WeVideo that allows us to record ourselves, add music and pictures, and edit everything together.
We work on the announcements at home throughout the week, before school and after school. Jeannie and I have made the first few weeks, and since then we've been teaching our classmates how to make them.
My favorite thing about making the morning announcements is adding stuff that's not on the script, like jokes and fun facts, because that is the fun part, being creative. And one feature I really like using WeVideo is audio, because I love playing music in the WeVideo, and yeah, it's just really fun.
My favorite thing about making the morning announcements is that you can choose the background and music. Because it's fun putting in backgrounds and music. One feature I really like using in WeVideo is the music of backgrounds.
Shelly, would I be able to share a sample of the video? Would you be able to give me that capability? Thank you. So we're going to show you a sample of one of the announcements that these two have made. As they told you, they are kind of the two that started it, and it's just grown from there. They created the first few weeks, and then they've been picking classmates to basically train how to use WeVideo, how the morning announcements go, and it's just grown and grown. So this is from a few weeks back. As you will see, this is one of our first Friday morning video announcements from LBES earlier this year.
Good morning, LBS. My name is Grady Gustafson.
And my name is Jeannie Pezza. We're from Miss Lennox's class.
Today is Friday, October 2nd, 2020, and these are your Friday morning announcements.
Today is National Custodian Day. It recognizes the hard work that it takes to keep our schools safe and clean. Thank you to our amazing custodians. Fun fact, did you know that October 1st and October 31st are the only nights of the October month that will be a full moon? Colton Jackson and Hannah McNeven had their birthdays on Tuesday. Brady Goldsberry celebrated his birthday on Wednesday.
Yesterday, Abigail McNaven celebrated her birthday, and today is Damiel Pazias' birthday.
Tomorrow is Christopher Davis's birthday. And on Sunday, William Breakstone and Mr. Martin are celebrating their birthdays.
Happy Friday, remember pause.
Practice kindness, act responsible.
Welcome challenges and show respect.
Thank you for watching Morning Announcements, and have an awesome weekend.
And don't forget to climb a tree or two, like I am. It's fun. Just up in a tree. Stuck though.
So as you can see, our fifth graders put a lot of work into the morning announcements every week. It's a fun way for us to connect, whether we're at home or in person at school, and just a really great opportunity for these guys to show off their creative and funny sides. So I'll leave it to the board if you guys have any questions for Jeannie and Grady about the work that they're doing.
Hi, Jeannie. Hi, Grady. I just wanted to say that that was amazing. I'm so impressed with you guys. So thank you for sharing that with us. As you know, I have a fifth grader as well. I've been hearing about these announcements at home. Mr. Duran, I bet you have as well. And I'm just really impressed with you guys. Great, great job. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, I think that was great, you guys. I bet your school is really happy to start the day with announcements from another student. Good job.
Thanks very much. I particularly liked your music selection too. That was very cool. Anybody else?
I'll just say great work. Really enjoyed it. I'm pumped up. I'm ready to go now. It's the end of my day, but it feels like it could be the start. A lot of energy.
Nice job, guys. That was fun.
Thank you, Mrs. Tivador.
Thank you so much, guys, for presenting. That took a lot of courage, and you did an awesome job.
Thanks to both of
You
you.
don't
also.
have to stay if you don't want to. That's a hard act to follow. We did skip, I was going to do a very brief president's report. I do want to remind people who are watching that we do have an election coming up in April of 21. And the deadline for submitting your paperwork to the Lake County Clerk is December 21st. So if you're interested in running for school board, we have 4 open positions. Anybody in the board would be happy to talk to you about what is involved in being on the board. Our emails are all on our website. There's also a video on the school district website as well as the Vote Lake Bluff website from, I believe it was October 21st, perhaps, where we did a Q&A on what it's like to serve on the board. So if anybody's interested, please consider those resources. The other thing is I wanted to draw attention to something. We don't often get the chance to celebrate something as cool as this, but we have not quite a Lake Bluff alum, but we have a Lake Forest High School alumni who just made the news today. She's a Lake Forester. Her name is Sydney Barber. She's got an article on her in a lot of different newspapers across the country and in the Patch locally. The headline in the Patch says, Lake Forest native Sydney Barber makes history at the Naval Academy. The Lake Forest High School grad is the first Black woman ever named brigade commander at the U.S. Naval Academy. So I have a little bit of a vested self-interest in the Naval Academy. My brother went there. He had a long Navy career. I know a little bit about what it's like to get into that school and get through that school and how elite and difficult that program is to navigate. And to be named a brigade commander and be a local person from our high school is pretty amazing. That's the odds are stacked against anybody to get that role. So not to diminish the West Point or the Air Force Academy or anything. I know there's tremendous rivalry there, but because she's one of our own, I just thought we should draw attention to that because we need things to celebrate, and that was pretty cool. Moving on, we did the elementary school presentation, and I guess we move right to our audit.
You know, I'm going to actually ask, Tracy has a couple of things.
Oh, sorry.
And then I will save my report for the return to learn update.
Okay.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Thank you. So during the summer, we had talked a little bit about how there may be additional differentiation for students and in their needs because of the school closure in the spring. And we had called this COVID impact support. And that's a little bit different than our multi-tiered systems of support that provides interventions for struggling students. So we've recently just completed MAP testing, and our teams have reviewed that data, and we were pleasantly surprised at the growth our students had made during the school closure. However, ECRA was able to run some of our data and determine that we do show some slight COVID impact in the area of math. And this information has really helped our grade level teams to identify ways to provide additional differentiation and teaching for students who need it. And we're looking for additional ways to provide some COVID impact intervention to those students who require support above and beyond differentiation within the curriculum. So while we are in the process of developing a plan to address this current need, we need to definitely remain vigilant through the use of data to continue to address our ongoing needs. We continue to be in a unique learning environment, and our staff continues to work tirelessly to meet the needs of our students. But we're not teaching in a normal environment, so we need to continue to monitor throughout the school year the impact that these changes have had on our students and their learning. So during this time, we've also gotten our multi-tiered systems of support up and running for students who need additional support in reading, writing, and math. These are students who would have needed intervention regardless of that COVID impact or the school closure in the spring. And so teams in both buildings have used current data to identify struggling students and develop intervention plans to address any gaps in their learning. And last, I just wanted to share that we have identified a small group of students in each building who have a high need for teacher support. In the event that we were to have to go to remote learning again, these students would be invited to come into the building for facilitated learning. We hope to keep these students in the buildings as long as possible, knowing that there could very well come a time when a full school closure is required. And I just have to say that our teachers, our teaching assistants, and our support staff have been so incredibly flexible, and they continue to put the needs of students at the heart of all of their decisions. So we wouldn't be able to keep this going without our wonderful staff. So that's all I have to share. Any questions for me?
Tracy, just want to say thank you for working so hard for giving these kids the services they need, and we appreciate that. Thank you. Anybody else?
Nope,
Okay.
I think we are ready to go on to the audit if there's no other questions.
All right. Nick, I think you're up. You're muted.
Yep. Excuse me. Thank you. Would you mind if I shared my screen? I put together a small presentation to go over the audit results. Okay. I am going to share my screen.
Everybody remember Nick from last year. Nick Cavallari is with Baker Tilly, our audit firm, and we've been with them for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I think. So they do a great job, and he's here to tell you about the most recent audit and answer any questions you have.
Well, thank you for having me here this evening. I put together a small slide presentation to go over some highlights on the audit results for the district's fiscal year 20 financial statement audit. If there's at a point in time, if there's a question or something like that, please, by all means, just interject. We have completed our audit. Our reports have been issued as of October 13th. So, we're all done. We're here to talk about the results of the audit, the comprehensive annual financial reports, the annual financial reports, some other matters as well. I want to just kind of go over a little bit regarding the scope of our financial statement audit. The things that we're engaged to provide assurance over are the district's comprehensive annual financial reports, also referred to frequently as the CAFR. There is an annual financial report that's required by all school districts in the state to be audited. It's an Illinois State Board of Education annual financial report, very frequently referred to as the AFR. There's another schedule that we are required to provide some assurance over. It's called a Consolidated Year-End Financial Report. It's a document that's required to be audited by the Grant Accountability and Transparency Unit of the state of Illinois. And then because we're performing an audit in accordance with governmental auditing standards, we're required to render a report on internal control over financial reporting and other matters relating to a governmental audit performance. Real brief, just to kind of inform the board and reiterate some things. I have some documents that you've probably received already. I've included a few bullet points and screenshots from those documents. To go over, management's responsibility is to prepare and present the financial statements, to establish and maintain an effective internal control over compliance with laws and regulations. And then at the end of the audit, they provide us with a set of representations over the amounts within the financial statements, the assumptions used, things regarding subsequent events. There's a whole host of particular matters that they attest to at the conclusion of the audit. Our responsibility is to render an opinion on those financial statements. We'll give consideration to your internal control structure over the preparation of the financial statements, but we're not actually engaged to render an opinion on your internal controls or their effectiveness. One of the things that we do during a governmental audit as well is, we give consideration to compliance with laws and regulations during the course of the audit. So if we identify any non-compliance matters, we will report those, but it isn't for the purposes of rendering a legal determination on the compliance with those laws. So when we're performing a financial statement audit, it's what's important is to understand risk. And the auditing standards essentially will say is that there's always this risk of management override. We call it a significant risk area when we're planning and performing our audit procedures. It's not specific to your district that we believe your management is overriding controls and things like that. That's not the case. It's just it's a standard risk area that all audits will have inherently with them. And as a result of that, we have an approach where we'll incorporate unpredictability into our audit procedures. We will have planning meetings, emphasize professional skepticism with our audit team, and the people that we put on your audit are industry specific. All of our team members will work exclusively on governmental audits and financial statement reports. We don't bring in people on our teams for your audit that do work on taxes or commercial or manufacturing types of engagements. So our teams are very, very well versed in governmental reporting. At the end of the day, was our audit identifying any issues with management override? And I'm pleased to let you know that we did not have any such issues. We believe that our audit approach did not identify any such matters. So that's kind of a significant risk area, but then there's other key areas of emphasis that we will focus on. So when we look at your financial statements, we break those into different pieces. There's key areas of emphasis that we gain an understanding over internal controls, and then we plan our audit approach around those. So these down here at the bottom, cash and investments, payroll, capital assets, revenues, I don't have to read them all to you, but those are some of the sections that are made up within your financial statements, and we gain a good understanding of your internal control environment and then tailor our audit approach to address any risks that those amounts may not be appropriately represented in your financial statements. What's important to understand is that within your comprehensive annual financial report, and with most financial statements, there is a certain amount of estimates that are required to be included in those amounts. Some of the estimates that most people are familiar with are like fair market value adjustments for the value of investments. But because you're a government, you have a lot of actuarial valuations that are used to determine, OPEB liabilities. An OPEB liability is another post-employment benefit offering to your employees. Pension liabilities are another big one. Depreciation expense for the value of your capital assets that are depreciated during the year. So what we do as part of our audit approach is we gain an understanding of the assumptions that were used in those estimates. We'll review them to see if they're reasonable, consider if there's any kind of, management bias in the estimates and things of that nature. A lot of these reports that we're acquiring and testing and doing a series of procedures on, your district isn't even generating. So we get reports from the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund for your district's pension liability, the teacher's retirement system, the teacher's health insurance system. So there's a lot of ancillary documents that we have to obtain to look at and include those amounts in your financial statements. What's important for you to understand is at the end of our audit, we did not identify any issues with those estimates. We believe that they were reasonable in relation to the financial statements as a whole. So the overall results of the district's fiscal year 2020 audit, our responsibility is to render opinions on those documents. And I'm pleased to let the board know that we were able to render an unmodified audit opinion on the district's comprehensive annual financial report. This is the highest level of assurance that you can receive from the external auditor that your financial statements present fairly in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That's the same level of assurance that we've been able to provide over the district's financial statements in prior years. We've also rendered an unmodified opinion on the district's annual financial report, the ISB form, in addition to the consolidated year-end financial report. So all of the documents that we were engaged to provide insurance over, we gave an unmodified opinion on. When I come to talk to the board, the comprehensive annual financial report is a very thick document. There's over 100 pages of information in there. The one thing I will say is that if you have time, your district's management's discussion and analysis, which is towards the front of the CAFR, is a very great summary of the results and some key points to pull out to understand what took place during the year. But there is a schedule that's in the CAFR that I always like to go over with boards. It is a statement of revenues and expenditures and changes in fund balances. This is ultimately your fund financial statements, income statement. What you'll see at the top are your revenues, you'll have your expenditures in the middle, and then this category down here at the bottom called other financing sources and uses, which is historically used or consistently used, I should say, for accounting for transfers between funds that are approved by the board, in addition to accounting for bond type transactions, so the issuance of debt, things of that nature. On the left side of the, I took a screenshot of the CAFR and view, but on the left side, these are kind of the district's day-to-day ongoing operational funds. Your general fund, which is for all intents and purposes your education fund and your working cash fund combined for external reporting purposes, the operations and maintenance fund, transportation fund, and the IMRF fund. These are your day-to-day operational funds. What I look at when I'm looking at your audit results, your financial, I guess, health balance of the district's financial statements, what I like to look at is this line right here, excess deficiency of revenues over expenditures. Are there inherent systemic ongoing, operational challenges where revenues are not sufficient to pace with ongoing expenditures? And what you can see is that for all four of these funds, the district was very, very well aligned, working within the financial resources that were available for the fiscal year. A small surplus was generated in your general fund, and the majority of that surplus was utilized and transferred out to fund the payments on your outstanding capital leases, in addition to project work that was performed out of your capital projects fund. So this $407,000 transfer is very, very close to your operational surplus in your general fund. So, on an ongoing basis, your district continues to be balanced on an operational balance. And then over on the right, we have these two funds, the debt service fund and the capital projects fund. The debt service fund is used exclusively to service your outstanding debt. So things of the nature like general obligation bonds and capital leases. And then the capital projects fund is consistently used for larger facility work, typically funded through either a bond issuance or fund balance transfers. And you can see that the capital projects fund started the year in fiscal year 20 with a slight deficit of about $3,000, nothing significant. And at the end of the year, you had a positive fund balance of about $137,000. So, overall, still a very good position for the district to be in. One of the things that we typically will talk about when I come to talk about the income statement every year is this concept of a state on behalf payment. It throws boards for a loop a little bit because there's a line item that we actually record in your financial statements. It's required under governmental accounting standards that there's a situation where the state of Illinois is making contributions on the district's behalf to the teacher's retirement system and to the teacher's health insurance system. These dollar amounts are required to be estimated, and we estimate them based on available information. If you look at this line right here, state retirement contributions, it's about $4.2 million. That's an estimate of the amount that the state of Illinois has contributed on your behalf to those systems during the year. That number is also included in your state aid line right here of $4.8 million. I'm sure the board sees monthly reports all the time. You know that you're not receiving directly $4.8 million from the state of Illinois to run the district, but this amount is required to be reported in your financial statements. So it's literally a revenue and an expense. It has no bearing on your ending fund balances. I took a quick screenshot from the state AFR form. Every school district in the state uses this annual financial report document. It has a series of schedules in there. The state board has created this particular tab within that document that all school districts are measured on to assess their financial score. And your district, as you can see, there's 4 criteria, fund balance to revenue ratio, expenditures to revenue ratio. There's a days of cash on hand. If you have any short-term borrowing that's outstanding, they'll assess that value. And then how much long-term debt you have outstanding compared to the statutory limit. And your district scored a 3.9 out of a 4.0 scale and received the recognition status, which is consistent with the recognition status that you received in the prior year as well. So one of the things that we're charged with in performing a governmental audit is to issue a report on internal control over financial reporting. During the course of the audit and planning and designing and conducting our audit procedures, if we identify any risks in your internal control over financial reporting, we're required to report those to management and to the governing body. I'm pleased to let the board know that we did not identify any material weaknesses during the course of our audit over internal controls over financial reporting. And lastly, as part of conducting an audit in accordance with governmental auditing standards, if we identify any instances of non-compliance with laws and regulations that can have an impact on the amounts that are recorded in the financial statements, we're required to communicate those as well and report those findings. And I'm pleased to let the board know that we had no such instances during the course of our audit. Auditing standards require that we communicate any difficulties encountered in performing our audit or any disagreements with management regarding accounting policies, estimates, balances and things of that nature. And I'm pleased to let you know that we had no such disagreements during the course of the audit as well. And that is all I have on my slideshow. I would be more than happy to take any questions that the board may have at this time.
I'd just like to say that it's always nice to get a clean audit, obviously. And the MD&A was very clear. And I'm glad you went over the differences between what is recognized in our general fund for revenue and what is recognized on the P&L in this audit document for revenue. Because when Jay makes his presentation in a few minutes, we have a different set of numbers for both revenue expenditures. And I'm glad you were able to clarify that a little bit, because you have to do a little math on the front page of the MDA to get there. So you had no, let's say, slowly blinking amber lights anywhere?
I'm sorry, what was that?
No slowly blinking amber lights anywhere?
No.
Good. Well, Jay does a great job, and I think the audit plays that out very clearly.
Yeah, it's important to understand that Jay and his team take a strong, they're very involved in the calculations of the year-end accruals. There's a lot of school districts that don't take the time to develop those year-end accruals. I think that you gain a lot when you do that work, because you're thinking more about the end result. It helps you think about the future as well for budgeting and how you're going to allocate your resources to meet the strategic goals of the district. And we see that consistently. The transmittal letter, the management's discussion and analysis, they're all very well-written documents, just well supported. You can pick that up and you can read it. And I can go back to all my audit testing that my team has performed, like, okay, and there's that, we tested that, we corroborated that. It's really a pleasure to work with your school district.
I'm sad to say that after probably 40 years of having it go through audits and reading NDAs and having conversations with auditors, this is probably my last one. So maybe you can send me a copy next year and I'll kind of look at it.
We could still touch base every once in a while. I'm open to that.
Thanks. That's a good job. Clearly done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jay, thank you as well. We appreciate it. If there's no other questions on that, we'll move on to the Dr. Leali's Return to Learn update.
Thank you very much.
Nick, good to have you. So I'm going to go ahead with my Return to Learn update tonight. It's a little bit, I have a few things to show you. But I did want to start and begin by talking a little bit about remind everyone what it's like to manage a school these days under COVID conditions, because it's relevant to the conversation as we move forward. As a reminder, we are asking parents to daily self-certify the health of their children. That is done every day, and we make calls every morning when a family forgets to do that. We've had about 20,000 of those daily self-certifications filled out so far this year. The majority of those have been filled out accurately, but sometimes symptoms do fall through the cracks, and we have students still coming to school with symptoms. So I do need to stress that all of the symptoms listed on that daily self-certification form, we really need to take very seriously, and let us know, if a student is exhibiting symptoms or if somebody in the home has tested positive for COVID, because as I'm about to describe, there's a lot of layers of things that we have to do, even if there's a symptom in the home. We work very closely with the health department to make sure that when students are ready to come back, they can come back and they have the proper documentation. So again, the smoother that process goes, the smoother everything goes. So that's just one kind of quick reminder about that piece. We've been managing a lot of substitutions and staff accommodations. We have definitely felt an impact of staff being out because they cannot be in the building again. Not only do our students have to self-certify, but our staff has to as well. And in prior years, you might come to school with a stuffy nose or a little bit of a cough. That is not the case anymore. So any symptoms for staff members, those staff need to stay home, and there needs to be proper documentation to have them back in the building. So again, our need for substitutes and moving people around to cover rooms has greatly increased, which has in the past couple of weeks started to impact some of our programming, because as we move someone to cover for someone else, then services are disrupted for students. So again, sort of that screening, following up, managing substitutions. When we do have a student present with symptoms at school, there's a whole process that goes on there. Our nurses do what they call house calls. We do not bring symptomatic students into the nurse's office anymore, so that we can keep that space clean and sanitized. So our nurses go out, they assess the students right there in the classroom and move them to an isolation room. Those classrooms then of students, if the student needs to go home, are moved to an alternate location. Our custodians swoop in, clean that classroom. When the student's family is contacted, the student and siblings go home. The isolation room is sanitized and disinfected. So there's a lot of moving pieces every single time a student presents with any symptom in school. And then finally, obviously, when we have positive cases, and as of now, today, we have had 11 students and 1 staff member, which was early in the summer, 6 at LBMS and 5 at LBES. When there's positive cases, then there's a whole nother layer of work that needs to be done with the Lake County Health Department in terms of filling out an online form, communication of contacts and doing the contact tracing for them, at least giving them the list of people, and then following up with paperwork. So our nurses have spreadsheets of data around students who've presented with symptoms, student absences, staff absences, and all of this that they're working through. And obviously our principals are working a lot with that as well. And then finally, kind of monitoring data and articulating around new changes in guidance, which again, we had even last week, twice weekly meetings with superintendents in the health department, and just rereading, readjusting, reinterpreting all the guidance that we're getting and all the data that's coming in. So the goal of this, and the reason I present all this, is because the goal of all of this work is to mitigate risk, right? So we have lots of risks that we're trying to mitigate this year. No one situation for us in terms of the learning environment or choices that we're able to give are perfect. So we are trying to mitigate achievement and growth risks and get as much contact with students as we can. We're trying to mitigate social and emotional risks in terms of lack of connection with students and their peers, students and teachers. Obviously, we're trying to mitigate health and safety risk. And the other thing that we're trying to work on is not losing instructional support for our teachers and our leadership. So part of a principal's job is to be an instructional leader and to be able to support some of the work that Tracy was talking about, designing interventions and progress monitoring achievement and growth, and, coaching teachers and teams of teachers through instructional methods, and really working on the learning and teaching part of school. And so one of the risks that we're finding ourselves in now is that we're losing some of that leadership capacity because of the management of the in-person instruction and all of the health and safety, pieces that we have to put in place. So I just put that out there because I want it to frame our discussion moving forward. We have had some questions recently about our liability and insurance coverage with regard to us continuing with in-person learning. As you know, and we'll get into the data in a couple of minutes, but as you know, there have been some recommendations from the Lake County Health Department to move to an entirely virtual platform. And we've had surrounding districts kind of have this conversation about, what is the risk to us to keeping students in the building? And so I'm going to ask Jay for a second to just talk through, if you could, some of the liability pieces that we've discussed, and then some of the insurance pieces as well.
Sure. So in general, the district has general liability insurance through CLIC, which is a cooperative. All of the school districts band together and pool their resources to file claims, and then they go out and buy reinsurance from other carriers to cover claims that are beyond sort of the pool of resources that we have. Any board member, current or previous, any staff member working on behalf of the district is considered a member of CLIC. So our students and anyone acting in the capacity of the district is a member of CLIC. And that what that means is that CLIC has a duty to defend that party in case of any lawsuit. So I think we've seen that recently where we've had lawsuits, dating from years back, and CLIC has been CLIC or the reinsurer that CLIC had hired has been there to cover those parties in the event of that lawsuit. However, that only extends for insurance without any exclusions. And so right now, there's no insurance company, CLIC included, or any other really private insurance that will cover communicable disease transmission. So if the district were to be sued, or any employee or board member of the district were to be sued over someone, say, contracting COVID in the district, our insurance company would not cover that. Having said that, there is something in state law, or basically in the legal statute, and I'm sure Julie could help, could explain it better than I will, but it's called tort immunity. And so what they're saying is basically, as a government entity, you are charged with providing a public service. And if there are, you cannot be held liable for any damages to people that are incurred during doing those duties, unless you show willful or wanton neglect. If you're negligent and as a result of that something happened, that is different. But if you're acting in good faith and putting in, basically taking care and in executing your duties, then you have immunity from prosecution. Having said that, you can still be sued, which would mean you were still on the hook for paying for a legal defense, but it's a very high bar, a very high standard that they have to prove to show that you were willful and wanton in your neglect. So the district has put in lots and lots of mitigation. We've taken all the recommendations of all the health departments from how we design and run our ventilation systems to, self-screening and social distancing and hand sanitizer and PPE. So we've been taking great care and showing that we are doing everything we can to mitigate the risk of someone contracting virus. Also, the health department has not come out and said, we recommend you close school. If they were to tell us we should close school and not hold it, and then we disregarded that and held school anyway, there could be an argument made that we were not acting as in the best interest of our students or staff. However, they've consistently said that it's an individual decision based on your local metrics, and that if your mitigation practices have been successful, and it's really up to you to decide whether what risk you think there is. And so to prove that we were negligent and were acting with disregard for health and safety of our students or staff would be very difficult to prove. So I think from that standpoint, tort immunity is pretty effective. There's also some legislation out there in the state legislature to try to pass laws to help avoid or to protect school districts in the event that somebody should catch COVID at a school and that and the school district be sued for that. So.
I want to pause there and make sure there aren't any questions about that before I move on.
So in summary, school districts are covered by insurance, but insurance doesn't cover this disease communication.
I appreciate you reporting back on that. I know there's been some discussion in the community about that issue, so I appreciate it being discussed here, and really just appreciate everything you guys are doing to cover all of the things that need to be managed to have school going right now. I know that that's a really complicated process that you're doing, so I appreciate the effort that you're putting in there.
Thank you. And I do want to say something, and we'll talk about the data in a second. Lake County Health Department has emphasized over the past couple of weeks that although there are data out there around outbreaks and where sort of cases have come in contact with different types of organizations, it's really, really hard with this particular virus to show causation. So much of that data is correlation. And so if there happen to be cases that have been to the same place or have been in the same place, that might be showing a correlation between those cases. But it's very, very hard to prove causation, that one caused the other, unless you actually test the specific strain of the virus from the individuals who happen to be in the same place at the same time. And so that is why Lake County has been hesitant to put out a lot of data around outbreaks, because the idea there is that an outbreak would be causing transmission of the virus, and they don't feel that there's evidence either way.
I just want to say thank you for raising this publicly as well. I was not fully aware of the difference in coverage between a more normal time and a COVID situation. And I think we need to make all decisions with eyes wide open, being fully aware of the risks and the benefits. And that leads me to my question is, have we had conversations with our attorneys that help us assess the risk-benefit analysis when we make the call about keeping kids in school or keeping kids at home, about the safety of that involved and the risk to the district?
Thanks for asking that question. We've consulted with a couple of different legal firms on this. And we've also, talked to our medical consultants, lots of people that we've talked to. What Jay presented is accurate. The Lake County Health Department did come out with a recommendation to shift to a virtual platform, which could be utilized in a potential lawsuit against the district is to show that we were disregarding that guidance. However, they would have to, the other party would have to prove wanton and willful neglect of that guidance and kind of show that the district was just acting in a very irresponsible way towards its staff and students. And the fact is that we have been able to implement with fidelity the processes and procedures, the PPE. We have been able to provide staff accommodations where people are medically fragile or have concerns. And so at every layer of this, we've been doing what we need to do, as well as looking at the data as a holistic picture, which has also been a recommendation from the Lake County Health Department from the beginning, just to kind of see more than one metric and really look at your community and what's happening in your schools and your zip code. We're going to go through all that data in a second, so you have a good idea of where we stand. But that would be what our attorneys would advise. Yes, it's a little bit riskier at this point because the health department has made that recommendation, but they have also stated publicly it's a superintendent's decision based on community data.
Thanks.
Any other questions before I move on? I'm going to share my screen really quickly because I do want to take a pause for a second and look at, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. I want to take a look at our first survey that we put out to parents and just to kind of check and see where we're at and how people are feeling about what's been going on this school year. Our first quick survey was on the resources that students have been provided when they are in the remote or in-person program. And you can see we had about 250 responses, a pretty nice even breakdown between grades. We had about half and half in school versus at home. And we talked about the ways that we provide resources, which we've been calling materials exchanges. So either something that the student, an in-person student would bring home if they have to go remote, or our remote students have that are learning at home. And about 92% of our parents scored us as a 3 or a 4. This scale was really not effective at all on the 1 end and very effective on the 4. So either effective or very effective, our parents have felt like those materials exchanges are so far at this point. There were some positive comments that had to do less with resources and more with other aspects. Just reported that teachers are going above and beyond in many areas. Students are busy and completing their work. The added support in the morning for students with IEPs has been very helpful. A lot of appreciation for keeping the in-person experience as a choice. Parents appreciate when there are low-tech type of assignments where they're not looking at the screen. They felt teachers are very positive. Kids are growing in their time management and independence. Teachers are available. Also grateful for the hybrid option. In terms of areas for growth, we've been asked to kind of look at our related arts and related services and try to expand those options and maybe some synchronous time for those. Some parents looking for more of a challenge or more differentiation, more tech support for parents, which we've been working on. More synchronous time online. Some are asking for more homework, less screen time, some more support for organizing materials or things that have to come back and forth. A couple of the frequently asked questions that keep coming up. One is sort of like, why is remote the primary platform still? And can we get kids who are in person, off of that remote platform and just, do regular school for the kids who are in school and remote for the kids who are at home? And I can't stress enough that part of the reason that we've been able to offer the choice of kids coming in person is I believe firmly that because we are having an equitable platform between the two, in person and at home. If we were not to do that, if we were to say, okay, in person looks just like regular school and at home looks very different, we would have a lot more parents that want to send their students to school, which would force us into more of a hybrid option, because we don't have the space to have all of our students in 5 days a week on the model that we have right now. So I feel very confident that having sort of equity between the two has allowed a lot of our parents to feel comfortable and confident making the choice to keep their students at home, which has reserved those in-person spaces for the students and families who really need it. And then again, another question that comes up often is why we're doing a late start. Why not start early? We know kids are fresher in the morning. That really has to do with transportation, unfortunately, in our bus situation. So that's all that is. So if there are no questions on the survey, I will move forward to look at where we stand with regard to our data at this point. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Sorry, that's for later. And we are going to look right now at the various levels of data that we look at every week to make the determination of whether or not we're going to stay in person. I'll start big and we'll go down small. So our first level of data is Region 9. Region 9 is Lake and McHenry County together. This is the region that Illinois has put us in. As you can see, we are now in a warning area of 10 days of positivity increases, 10 days of hospital admission increases. So we're kind of seeing that we're getting to a threshold with bed availability in ICU. Then positivity rates are broken down. These are Region 9, which are the two counties together. And then they break out Lake County. And you can see that we've increased to a daily test positivity of 17%. McHenry is definitely higher. So there has been some question about, we don't want to only use Region 9. So when we go down to just Lake County, we are now in Lake County at a warning level of new cases per 100,000, also number of deaths, test positivity rate, tests performed, almost every area, Lake County is now CLI is COVID-like admissions or illnesses. We're getting close to the ICU bed availability. So lots of areas that the IDPH has identified Lake County in a warning level. So overall, that is where the county is at this point. I have showed the Lake County COVID school dashboard before. This is where we get the virtual learning model indication. As you can see, we've seen a dramatic rise in the incidence rate. The incidence rate is the number of positive cases out of the entire population, where positivity percentage is more the number of positive cases out of the number of tests. Incident is out of the total population. So you can see there's quite a spike here, and we're up to over 50. The threshold is 14, and Lake County in total is up to over 50. Now, if we look at our zip code, we're hovering kind of where we've been the whole time for a while here. And then when we logged on today, literally this morning, we got about 5 days worth of data put into the system in one day. And this is how the data has been coming in for us. There's a lag for the data because, as we've talked about before, Lake County will actually try to scrub it and remove duplicates and kind of put county data that belongs somewhere else to that other county, and then we get some that belongs to us. So there's definitely a lag, and you can see that there are times when we just get a lot of data at once, and today was one of those days. So we are now getting even close to the Lake County incidence rate, and we are now at 44. We add a 0 to that because the incidence rate that for a zip code, no zip codes are at 100,000 or very few in Illinois. So they're really doing the incidence rate by 10,000. So if we want to figure out where we are in relationship to that 14 per 100,000, we just multiply it by 10. And our positivity rating is still only around 4%, which is a good thing. But this incident rate is where the county is really making its recommendations.
But that positivity rate data lags behind by a week or more behind the incident rate.
October 27th. Yes.
That's an old one.
We'll probably see that spike as well. This is November 7th. And, you know, I do want to thank Mark because he's been doing some advocacy for us in terms of the state and just trying to get the state to be a little bit more timely with this data for us because very hard to make these decisions when the data lags like this, but this is what we have to do. There is another site that Mr. Blackmer brought to my attention today, which can give us kind of a general idea of where we're headed. This site seems to be updated more frequently. And as Nate would say, he's been kind of watching between the two, and it's a good predictor of where we're headed. And as you can see, Lake County is sort of in a dangerous situation with the number of new cases that are happening. Are there any questions on the data that we've been looking at? One of the very positive things about this situation is that so far we have been able to continue to implement all of our mitigation strategies. The unfortunate thing is that I think as of tonight, we've had beautiful weather for the last few days, but as of tonight, things are changing. And what that means is that we will lose one of our key risk mitigators, which is our outside spaces. We really have utilized our outside spaces to have kids eat and take mask breaks and get outside and just get that fresh air. As the weather changes, you know, this part of town, we're not going to have as many of those days available to us. We have packed up our tents because we're not getting heaters for out there. And so that is a key piece. The other part that we're losing is, and I'll talk about this in a minute, we do have a bunch of families who have indicated they'd like to come in for trimester 2. We do plan on honoring that commitment, but that will cause us to lose some alternate locations. So like I talked about before, when any student presents with a symptom, if they have to go home, which 95% of the time students have to go home with their siblings, that class has to be moved. And so we need lots of alternate locations. And to bring those students back, we will lose some of those alternate locations as well. So in closing, for this part of the presentation, we are not seeing our numbers going in the right direction at this point. We have another task force meeting on Thursday morning where we'll continue to look at the data with that group and have a discussion about what next week should look like. I do want to put out there that I know there's very different opinions about how this should be handled. I can tell you that we've held tight to the fact that our town has really kept the numbers low. We've been appreciative of that. We are definitely feeling the impact of both our metrics in Lake Bluff and also the greater Lake County community because our staff are being impacted. They're having symptoms, having to stay home, coming in close contact. So all of it's starting to heat up and we are definitely feeling that impact. What we don't, in my opinion, want to have is a situation where we have to go out because of an outbreak or because people are finding themselves not feeling well after being in the same space with someone and starting to have that kind of conversation. That's a different kind of metric that I don't think we want to find ourselves dealing with. So as Tracy talked about, should we need to shift to remote learning for everyone for a time, we will be inviting our pre-K students back into the building and a small group at each building of at-risk students with IEPs. Some who are remote now, some who are in person now. We're trying to really target the students that need that extra support. And those would be significantly reduced class sizes. We're talking a ratio of less than 1 to 5. So we can really space kids and facilitators out. Again, though, we're making our decisions week to week. I know this is difficult for families and teachers to try to cope with these transitions in between in and out. This Thursday, I'll make the decision for next week and Thanksgiving week, because right now we only have 2 days of school Thanksgiving week. So I think we can make a decision for the next 7 days before that Thanksgiving holiday so people can plan. But I can tell you right now, it's the numbers are not supporting us continuing with in-person learning for the next couple of weeks, given that huge spike. But we do continue to plan to bring in students when we can, again, the ones that want to be with us for trimester 2. Our target date is still November 30th, which is the Monday after Thanksgiving. And we will be communicating regardless with families the week of the 23rd, what changes will take place with their schedules and class assignments and things when we're able to bring everyone back. So the week of the 23rd, parents who responded that they would like to come in will get information about what that will look like. And again, our target date for starting all that is November 30th. As you will see later on tonight, we've updated our staffing plan to reflect that we need 3 additional paraprofessionals, 2 at LBES and 1 at LBMS. These are to help us facilitate our sessions with more students in the building. We're updating our building maps, shifting some class lists. And so, like I said, that information will be coming soon. There may be use of a remote planning day in there as well. As you remember, we have 3 left from the state, which are working days for teachers, but non-student attendance days. So we are looking at where we might be able to use one of those as we shift as well. Mark?
Question. How many students are asking to come back at the next trimester?
So that data is changing a little bit. We had originally about 140 students, but as we have, as we've been reaching out to families, we've also had families reach out to us saying that they are actually stepping back from that decision at this point because of the data in Lake County and not feeling as comfortable. I know that we have some families who've indicated that they want to come in, but are still unsure and just trying to save a space. I can tell you that's been really difficult for us to manage because we're trying to staff for who wants to be with us. And so as tempting as it is to say, we'd love to come in, but we're not coming yet, we really need people to commit if they want to come in because we're adjusting staff, bringing them in from remote, we're adjusting rooms, we're adjusting class lists to accommodate that. And I know it's a really hard decision for parents. And I know that the data is changing. Believe me, we're watching it all the time. But the more accurate parents can report to us what they really want, the better we'll be able to plan.
If you get 100 some odd kids in the building, in addition to what you have now, how close are you to capacity if the law doesn't change, if the rule guidance doesn't change on spacing?
Yeah, I will let Kelly and Nate talk about that, but I'm going to guess we are very close to capacity at that point. And it is this 6-foot guidance that is making that the case. Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I can respond to that. Really, we've estimated that we can accommodate as many as 60 kids per grade level at the middle school and still reserve space to evacuate kids too. If we need to evacuate a classroom due to a symptomatic student, different from the elementary school, we're based on the families that have expressed interest in an in-person option. We had exceeded the amount of students that we could host in the building 5 days a week. So we did submit a survey to our community asking them to respond to that. As of right now, I've got 153 responses with 203 parents who've expressed interest in an in-person option. So I just wanted to remind those that are watching that we need to, tomorrow is the due date for submitting that hybrid versus 5 day a week preference. And we have had about 11 families who've said, I've changed my mind. I want to stay fully remote. But really, 60 is the max per grade level that we can house at the middle school.
My answer isn't quite as clean as Nate's, but what I can say is currently we are utilizing 18 classrooms at the elementary school, and we're looking to increase that by 4. Just in terms of the number of sections that we are hoping to add of in-person learners. And that really is based upon the number of families that have expressed interest in sending their child in. So our classrooms now, individual classrooms are not going beyond the 16, 17 mark. We're going to nudge them up to 18, but know that we can do that safely. And are just continuing. The staffing piece is a big one for us, just in terms of the certified teachers within the building that can continue to be there to guide students in their learning. I hope that answers it.
I would say the other thing that we will find, I'm sure, is that with more students in the building, more opportunities for students to become symptomatic, more of that management piece on our principals and assistant principals, which again, there's a balance there because we need instructional leaders in those buildings as well, working through teaching and learning. So I just want to make sure that I put that out there as well, because there will be an increase in all of that management when we do take that on. And we know how important it is for kids to be in school. We know how important it is for some kids more than others. So we recognize that. And like I said, this is all about risk mitigation. There is not one best way to do this. As you can see from surrounding districts, everyone's sort of making the decision they need to make. Sorry. And we're just going to keep going down that path as well.
So trying to accommodate all those extra kids, it sounds like we're getting very close to being maxed out. It sort of underscores the importance of the self-certification process, that we ask that our community take that really, really seriously and take all that, the symptom checks absolutely literally, that if your child or student has any of those symptoms, regardless of what you think it might be, they need to be staying home, correct?
Yeah, and like I said, we've had over 20,000 entries to those forms, and the majority of those entries are spot on. I think where it gets a little confusing is, for example, if you have a child that has sometimes a symptom of just something that's normal for them, that isn't really even COVID related. What we do need to recognize is that sometimes while COVID doesn't present with symptoms in children, if they have something else happening that's causing them to sneeze or cough, those things those symptoms, those particular ones act as accelerants, whether or not you have a mask on. And so that sort of messes around with our plan a little bit, because if a student is asymptomatic or not having some of those symptoms, we don't typically have to quarantine because we're keeping everyone 6 feet apart. There shouldn't be a lot of, droplets happening. But even if those symptoms aren't coming from COVID, if the student has it, that will cause acceleration of spreading of the virus. And again, we have multiple stakeholder groups here. Everyone has a very different opinion. It is our obligation to take care of everyone that comes into our schools. And obviously we have staff, we have our staff's families, we have lots of, people that we're trying to take care of.
Anything else in that update, Dr. Leali?
I don't have anything. Like I said, we will, we'll discuss again the Return to Learn Task Force. It'll be this Thursday at 9:30. Again, the whole community is welcome to join us either on YouTube or on the Zoom link. Those are all recorded. You can see our last few conversations as well. And I do a lot of what we just did, which is looking at the data that I have in real time. A few questions have come in about a school level dashboard to monitor all these data pieces, or a district level dashboard. I've been looking into some, and I thank you to everyone who has sent me samples of other districts. Some are very simple, and some are a little bit more complicated. The one thing that I hesitate a little bit with taking data that's coming from all these different places and putting it into one place is we're really trying to look at it as a holistic picture. Even when you look at student achievement data, right? The MAP test is a snapshot. The IAR is a snapshot. The math test from last week is a snapshot. All of it together with your anecdotal data and instructional data becomes more like a photo album, and you can see the story better. That's what we're trying to do with the data with regard to this as well. There's a lot of different data points. There's a lot of interpretation that goes into this. And we really need to look not only at that data, but how we're managing it.
Any other questions for Dr. Leali on this?
I have a question. This goes back to something you said earlier. The late start that we have, I understood that in the past to be a way for you to have additional time to manage the changes that were happening with staffing. But I
go ahead.
So I'm sorry, tonight I understood you to say that that delayed start was about the transportation. And I just wanted to clarify, because sometimes people ask me about it and I want to make sure I'm giving the right answer.
Oh, thank you. And actually it's true that late start, the time, the block of time that we have is for teacher planning and preparation so that we can use them to cover for each other during the day. But the reason we're doing it at the front end of the day instead of the back end of the day is because of transportation, because we know it might be better to do an early release in terms of kids' energy level and just bring them in right away in the morning. And then, but actually we aren't able to do that because of the way we share buses.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. Okay, so now Mr. Khan is up and is going to review the tentative levy.
All right, I will make this quick. Shelley, if you can turn on my screen sharing. So last meeting, I went through the all the details and explained how the levy is calculated, and gave the recommendation for the tentative levy. I'm just going to review that tonight. The board during the approvals, you'll be actually approving the tentative levy. This is a required step in the levy process where you approve the estimate of the levy at least 20 days prior to the final levy approval, which will be in December. So just to refresh your memory, we're asking this year for a increase equal to the increase in the consumer price index. And some of the reasons for this are really, we feel like our long-term projections are riskier at this time due to COVID. We're not sure how long this is going to last and how much it's going to cost. And we want to make sure that we are bringing enough revenue to deal with any eventualities and keep our fund balance in the desired range. In general, we need to keep growing our revenue at pace to keep up with inflation. We have some contractual inflationary costs mostly with salaries and benefits because we are primarily a people business. And so we need to keep our revenue in pace with that. The 5-year projections basically assume that we're also keeping up our facilities. So this level of revenue will allow us to address those needs. And then, as I explained last time, our ability to tax in the future really depends on what we tax today. And so we want to be able to preserve that ability going forward. So we would like to continue to levy at the consumer price index. So just to review it, the CPI for next year is 2.3%. And we're expecting EAV, which is the value of all the property in the district, to be roughly flat at just shy of 700 million. And then we're also looking at new property. This is property that's new to the tax rolls. It has not been taxed before. It's either newly built houses, new renovations, or new businesses. So last year, so basically we're asking for a 2.3% increase on our existing homes, which is about $16 million. And then the impact of new property and some rounding gets us to a total operating levy ask of $16,300,000, which is a total of a 3.1% increase. Again, 2.3% on existing homes, and the balance is made up from the taxes on new property. Our debt service extension will be roughly flat for next year, and the total taxes that we are asking to be extended next year are $18,500,000, a total increase of 2.8%. And so you'll be seeing this for approval at the end of the meeting, and then we will publish a public notice notifying the community that this is what we're asking for, and you'll come back in December and we'll ask you to approve the final levy. That's all I had, unless there are any questions.
I would just point out that if anybody wants more detail and a more full-blown presentation, I would point them to the video from I believe it was our very last meeting, where you went over this in quite a bit more detail.
Yes, the presentation is on our website, and then you can also watch the actual presentation at the board meeting, which goes through it. The presentation does contain notes if people want to read through behind the slides to see what we talked about.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for Mr. Khan? So if there are none, we will then move on to item 8E, which is an update on an equity discussion. Dr. Leali will lead us through that.
This is going to be very brief. We just kind of want to keep it rolling through our agenda just so that I can keep you updated on the work that we're doing. I just wanted to let you know that I've had a couple of meetings with surrounding districts who are interested in doing this work together and just kind of exploring this work together. Tracy and I have joined a kind of a regional equity planning group that is being led by NSSED. And we also have Bannockburn included in there, Lake Forest, Highland Park 112, Deerfield, Highland Park Deerfield High School. So there's a kind of a big, nice group that wants to do some exploration and discussion and learning together. And we are also interested in looking for an outside kind of third party to help us with an audit. To just kind of take a look at all the aspects of the organization as a third party and give us some of that qualitative data, kind of, Julie, like we talked about, that baseline of what is it that we actually are experiencing, our students are experiencing, our parents and community members, so that we have something to work off of. And I think because this work can be so personal and it can be a little bit controversial, I think it would be nice for us to work with an outside agency that has a framework for that and can give us some actionable information with which to work. So that's a quick update on that. We're moving forward. I'm doing some of my own professional development on this as well, so that I can be really informed as we work through the process.
Can I ask you, when we talk about equity, what are there certain kinds of equity that we're talking about? Is it, learner issues? Is it, socioeconomic issues? What kind of equity are we looking at?
Yeah, so broad actually, and would be incorporating all of those. So socioeconomic, class, race, gender issues, identity issues, even family structure. Family structures can be very different. All of those pieces, as well as, neurodiversity and things like that, different kinds of learners. I mean, the idea is really to get a broad idea of how we're addressing all the different needs of our students and make sure that we're providing what they need before we start to engage in the learning, the teaching and learning. So, and as I'm learning about it, really there's kind of 3 dimensions that we would be looking at. One would be that personal piece of everyone in the organization kind of becoming just aware of their own thoughts and ideas around all those areas of equity. The other would be for us as a board and leadership team to look institutionally, as an organization, are we set up well for each of these groups? Do we have the supports we need in place? Are we investing in the right spots? Do we have the right professional development? Is staff correct? Are our processes and procedures correct? And then down to the instructional level of what does that look like in the classroom, and how can we support teachers to have what they have so that we can give the kids what they need? So yeah, there's lots of different areas that equity incorporates. It's sort of like maybe a bigger umbrella to, I'm sure you've talked about differentiated instruction, looking at a student's needs and being able to deliver instruction that really addresses their personal challenges and strengths. This takes it a little bit step further to go and look at underneath all of that, achievement and growth data, and say, like, are students really ready for learning? Have we created a system where they feel a sense of belonging, where they feel really connected to us? They see themselves with whatever they bring to the table, they see themselves reflected in our conversations and our materials, and that everyone sort of feels that collective ownership, no matter where they're coming from.
Okay. So do we have a sense of the resources, the timeline for this, the monetary resources that we're going to devote to this? What's the path?
Not yet. I mean, I do think we need that baseline. We need to really see where there are areas for us to attack at this point. And so far, the only thing that's been devoted to it is time, the time in the group to kind of really dig into some of the resources that we have at our disposal in the region. And then again, looking for that third party. And I want to try to look at a few different organizations and see which would be most appropriate for us. And obviously would be looking for something that wouldn't be too outrageously expensive, but this is definitely an area that is something that we have been tasked with by the state. You've talked about achievement gaps before. We're going to talk about the state report card, which is lacking in a lot of data this year. But in the past, your report card would talk about achievement gaps, I'm sure, between students with IEPs, students without IEPs, potentially with second language learners, and those kinds of pieces. So this is really kind of going to the leading indicator of, let's not wait for the data. Let's make sure we're making the adjustments on the front end so that we can really get high level results from all of our students.
Thanks for the overview.
Sure.
Speaking of report cards, that's our first action item, is the district report card that we have to approve annually. Dr. Leali, is anybody on your team, or do you want to say anything about that before we take a vote on that? That is included in the board packet for everybody to view. What is being presented tonight will then be submitted to the state, I believe.
It's already been issued to us from the state, so okay. It's posted on our website and things. But essentially, in the past and in the future, we will discuss actual student achievement data with regard to standardized assessments, and hopefully give you also a benchmark overview. What do our local assessments look like, and what are our plans for improvement? At this point, because we suspended all state assessments last year, there's very little achievement data in the report card. A lot of the data that's typically reported in a report card has a little asterisk next to it, potentially could have been impacted by COVID. So even down to attendance data and other pieces like that, the state isn't really super confident in the data that it put out from the 1920 school year, just because of that really tumultuous spring that we had. At this point, we are scheduled to be doing standardized and state assessments, the accountability measures in the spring. We have not been given a lot of guidance on how we will do that, but it is still scheduled. So this report card for this year should be an anomaly. In the future, we should have a lot more information that we can present and talk about.
Any questions or discussions, comments, concerns on that? Okay. Not hearing any. May I have a motion to approve the district and school report cards as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Leanne, can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Marzen,
Yes.
Charlot, yes. Gottschall,
Yes.
Haig,
Yes.
Duran,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Barry.
Yes. That motion is approved. Item B, the student transportation agreement. As previously discussed, the board is asked to approve a transportation agreement for special education students. Any questions, comments, or concern on that?
Yeah, I have a question. It says the district, let me see if I can find it, but the district, parents have requested that the district transport the child, and the district agrees to that request. How is, if I recall, is that a taxi service that we're using to do it? How's that?
Yeah, Jay, do you want to talk about it?
Yes, the district contracts with a student transportation company to provide the transportation. And because we're transporting individual students or small groups of students to very disparate places, they use what they call Division I vehicles as opposed to a school bus. So they would use a regular automobile car to do it. So it's not like necessarily a cab, but they also provide cab services.
Okay. And are you comfortable, I guess the attorneys were comfortable that saying the district will do it means that it's understood that there will actually be a third party transport service that's doing it? And I guess related to that, do we need a waiver of liability related to this? Or are you comfortable that because this is something the district sometimes does in the ordinary course, that it's implicit here?
We have insurance. The cab companies, actually those long agreements that at the last board meeting include insurance requirements. So the cab companies or the transportation companies provide insurance. And then above and beyond that, the student, our district insurance would cover it. We would typically provide transportation for these students anyway. So this is no different. This is just transporting to a different place.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right. So may I have a motion to approve the student transportation agreement as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please. Can't hear you, Leanne. What do we do, Shelley?
Shelley, do you want to do a roll call?
John, can you mute yours? Yeah, I can do it. Andy Duran,
Yes.
Ann Hill,
Yes.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, Julie Gutschall,
Yes.
Richard Hegg,
Yes.
John Rosen.
Yes.
All right, the motion is approved. Stand by, we'll see who does it next time. The annual statement of affairs. School code states that the school district joint agreements are required to complete the annual statement of affairs and publish in the local newspaper all salary schedules and vendor contracts over $2,500. School districts and joint agreements are also required to submit the completed electronic form to Illinois State Board of Education, excluding payments of $500 to $999. The annual statement of affairs must be published in the local newspaper no later than December 1st annually and submitted to ISB electronically no later than December 15th annually. ISB will publish the annual statement of affairs on the ISB website by January 15th of the following year. This is something we do every year. We approve every year. It's a big form that's in your board packet. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Mr. Khan? Not hearing any. May I have a motion to approve the annual statement of affairs as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have a second? Andy?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Leanne, go and try. Can we hear you?
I got it.
Language.
Ann Hill,
Yes.
Andy Duran,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo,
Give a thumbs up. There you go.
Mark Barry,
Yes.
Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
John Morozin,
Yes.
Richard Hegg.
Yes.
The motion is approved. Item D, the tentative levy. This process of setting the levy is completed annually and must be approved by the school board prior to the last Tuesday of December. Levies are tentatively approved the month before to allow time for public notice. The term property tax cycle includes the entire annual process of the board adopting a property tax levy, submitting that levy number to the county clerk, and receiving the distribution of property taxes from the county treasurer. The cycle can be easily compared to the seasons in the year. In the winter, December, a property tax levy is approved. In the spring, by June, county clerks process billing statements for property owners. In the summer, the county treasurer distributes property taxes collected from the first installment payment. In the fall, the second installment payment is distributed, and the cycle begins again. Jay has given us a presentation on this month as well as last month. Is there any questions for Mr. Khan on the tentative levy? Not hearing any. So may I have a motion to approve the 2020 tentative levy as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please, Shelley.
John Morozin,
Yes.
Richard Hegg,
Yes.
Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, Mark Barry,
Yes.
Andy Duran,
Yes.
Ann Hill.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item E, the updated staffing plan. The administration is bringing an updated staffing plan forward to support the additional in-person learners, which we've discussed. Over 100 potential in-person learners and three additional staff to support them. Any questions or comments for Dr. Leali on that request?
Want to note these are temporary positions, and even if we were to shift to remote, our paraprofessionals provide a tremendous amount of support remotely as well for teachers and students. So this will be utilized regardless of if we're in person or remote.
Does this come out of our contingency planning, Jay, or is that from a different?
It does. This would come out of the contingency that was budgeted. However, in addition, we did budget not outside of contingency. At the beginning of the year, we budgeted for 2 health aides positions, and we did not fill those. So these are sort of already in the budget, and these hopefully will either be able to help out with the health aid, help out with our nurses in addition to providing support to students. But we're several months into the year already, so there's money that we haven't been spending that was in the original budget. So it comes out of both buckets.
Okay. Any further questions on this discussion? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the updated staffing plan as presented by the administration?
So
So
moved.
moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second, I'll do second. Shelley, can we please have a roll call vote?
Mark Barry,
Yes.
Ann Hill,
Yes.
Andy Duran,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
John Morozin,
Yes.
Richard Hegg.
Yes.
Motion is approved. This month's personnel report, item F, includes 3 FMLA Act requests for Victoria Weber, a music and STEAM program at the elementary school, effective April 19th of 2021 for 12 weeks. And Ernest Graves in maintenance at the elementary school, October 9th, 2020. It's an intermittent leave. And Julie Volge, I apologize if I butchered your name, in the kindergarten at the elementary school, effective March 19th, 2021 for 12 weeks. Also includes an open position / carryover position of Kristen Armstrong, who's a teaching assistant at the middle school, effective September 30th of 20 for family reasons. Any questions or comments, concerns, discussion on that? They have a
Just that
motion.
Mark, just that Julie Volges is not it's not a family medical leave. It's just an unpaid leave of absence.
Unpaid leave, okay. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the November 10th, 2020 personnel report as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please, Shelley?
Julie Gutschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
John Morozin,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, Mark Barry,
Yes.
Andy Duran,
Yes.
Ann Hill.
Yes.
The motion is approved. I think, should we say that, let the record show that when Mrs. Charlo's silence has been accompanied by the thumbs up, just so people know. Our final voting item tonight is the item G, the consent agenda. This month's consent agenda includes the open session meeting minutes for October 21, 2020 special Board of Education meeting, the October 27th, 2020 regular Board of Education meeting. It includes the treasurer's report, the impress report, the bills report, the P card report, and a resolution to transfer funds from contingency. Would anybody like any one of those items pulled out of the consent agenda to discuss separately? Not hearing any. Any discussion or comment? So may I have a motion to approve the November 10th, 2020 consent agenda as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please, Shelley.
Andy Duran,
Yes.
Ann Hill,
Yes.
Mark Barry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, Julie
Thumbs up.
Gutschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
John Morozin.
Yes.
The motion is approved. That was our final action item for the evening. Item 10, FOIA requests. Didn't see any in the board book. I wanted to apologize. Here we come to public comments again. I did say that we were going to offer up public comment after Dr. Leali's return to learn update, and I forgot to do that. I apologize. If anybody was waiting to make a comment on Zoom, please raise your hand. I don't see any. Any written comment, Shelley?
Not at this time, and I don't see any hands raised yet.
I don't either.
At this
All right. Well, thank you for attending. And does anybody on the board have any comment or anything they want to raise? Not hearing anything. May I have a motion to adjourn at 8:43 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
And one final roll call, please, Shelley.
Start with thumbs up, Leanne.
No, she's going to go down.
Julie Gutschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
John Morozin,
Yes.
Andy Duran,
Yes.
Ann Hill,
Yes.
Mark Barry.
Yes. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Have a
Good
good
night,
night.
everyone.
Dr. Leali, good luck with all the tough decisions coming up.
Yeah. A lot.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
You too.
Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving.